Hello, welcome to 9 Letters of Carols for Curious People. I'm Robin Ince, and here's another section. And for those of you who've watched it before, some of our clips, you will know that we had guests in our 24/25-hour live show from every single continent on the world. And in this particular section, we have a guest from where we ticked off another continent. I'm not going to tell you which one. You will find out shortly. But also, you are going to see, if you think I'm talking quickly now, you wait till you see the speed that Ben Goldacre talks in the next section. We also have Andrea Sella, and we have Josie Long, and we have a Father Christmas who may be related to Stewart Lee or might not. I mean, it's really up to you to decide.
Now, the next person, I'm so glad. You know what? Overall, I've not been happy about the fact that we're not able to do kind of a normal show that we're doing instead of the fact that rather than do a 3-hour show, we've now stretched out to 24 hours. But also, overall, it's a sad thing that you don't get to see a lot of the people that I work with. We have a really great time. A lot of the scientists, musicians, and comedians coming together. The next person I'm going to bring on is someone that I love and I think is absolutely fantastic. But I'm also kind of happy that they're not here in this room, because the last time we did a show here last year where we were just, normally on stage, he, as far as I remember, it was an enormous kind of container of sulfuric acid, wasn't it, Steve? And he's a chemist, and so he does, and he's as clumsy as chemists can be. He told me everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be safe, I've got it all set up, but not realising that he had one dodgy wheel on his trolley, and then just before going on, spilt sulfuric acid, which apparently has health and safety issues, across the whole of the backstage area. So then the rest of the night, all of us psychosomatically thought our feet were on fire, didn't they, basically? So he is a brilliant chemist, and I'm very glad that he's joining us. And I think he's doing... I feel sorry for his family, because I think he's going to do an experiment from his own home. So it's them who are going to suffer this time. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrea Sella!
I'm muted, of course. I had to start that way, didn't I?
That is proper scientist. You know what? Amazingly, you are also the first person in 8 hours to forget to unmute. So you're elevated even more.
Look, I am up there as top nerd. But I thought that maybe I should actually bring one of last year's shoes. Do you remember this? Legendary. It was a night to forget, I have to say. So there was an awful lot of mopping that went on backstage. Now, I was wondering about what I should do tonight, and we conducted a family risk assessment, and we decided that perhaps burning our house down 3 weeks before the real beginning of Brexit was probably unwise. And so I'm going to really keep demos to a minimum tonight.
So what are you going to destroy, but very much to scale tonight?
Well, I just want to tell you a story, actually. A story which is really a cry in favor of liberalism and science together. And I think this is an important time when we should be actually trying to think about slightly more hopeful things than all the darkness that we see around us.
Great. Please go ahead.
Shall I start? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really think I should start perhaps with either Galileo or Newton, because both of them actually shone light through pieces of glass. Galileo, of course, made a telescope. It was a bit shit, but, it was fine. It was enough to be able to see the moons of Jupiter. And it had this funny property that it looked, Jupiter looked a bit red on one side and blue on the other. But no matter. He could see the moons of Jupiter. That was enough for him. Well, when Newton actually passed light through some glass, he saw something very interesting. Of course, what Galileo had been using was a lens. And the whole point about a lens is the fact that the speed of light changes when it passes through the glass, and that allows it to change direction. And what Newton did was to pass light through a prism, and not only did the light change direction, but it changed direction differently for different colors, different wavelengths of light. And so you have these two phenomena. One is called refraction, the other is called dispersion. And in order to make a really good telescope or a really good microscope, you've got to get both of them right. And so I want to tell you the story of how some of this was solved. And one of the things that people realized was that if you started using, instead of a single lens, you made a lens out of two parts made of different glass. A guy called Dolland actually started to solve that here in the UK. But in Germany, in southeastern Germany, in Thuringia, in the town of Jena, there was a very ambitious young microscope maker. His name was Carl Zeiss. And he began making microscopes, classic thing, which had a lens, and then you put the sample underneath it, and then below that you had a little mirror so that you could illuminate your sample, and off you went, right? And he was selling these microscopes, and it was all very well. Well, it was about 15, 20 years into his business that he met a very, very ambitious young man called Karl Abbe, who'd just gotten a lectureship at the University of Jena. And they suddenly realized that they were speaking the same language. On the one hand, Zeiss wanted to do business with lenses, and Abbe thought that he could make better lenses. And so there was a real partnership. The thing about Abbe was that he was the 11th of 14 children. He came from a very, very poor family, and that really kind of set up his whole worldview. But he was brilliant. And he'd gone to the best university. He'd got scholarships and so on. And he and Zeiss started working together, and they started bringing new products to the market. They brought out something called a refractometer, which allowed them to test for food adulteration, checking whether butter was pure or not. They started bringing out lenses which were made not out of 2 pieces of glass, but 3. These came to be known as apochromats. And then Zeiss worked on the mathematics of lenses. And one of the things that he realized was that to make the perfect lens, you had to do calculations not just for light going straight through, but also going through at an angle and then being refracted round. And he came up with what's called the Abbe sign law. And the Abbe sign law is absolutely critical because what it shows is that the smallest thing you can see depends on the wavelength of the light. Now, there was a question earlier about what's the smallest thing you can see that was given to Jim Al-Khalili, and I think this is exactly it. The smallest thing we can see is determined by wavelength, and electron microscopes are based on exactly the same principle. Well, the company was growing and growing, and Abbe was very concerned about the workers. And as the company grew, he became a sort of co-director of the company, a co-shareholder with Zeiss. And he started instituting reforms for the workers. He provided paid holidays. He provided sick leave. He provided maternal leave. He started providing annual holidays and, above all, pensions. And this was something that was completely unheard of up to that time. Well, in 1876, he came to London and he gave a great speech where he said, you know what? The limits to microscopes are not determined by the mathematics that I've calculated. The big problem is actually the quality of the glass. And it was at this point that a chemist, a man called Otto Schott, a young, ambitious man, heard this message, and he started casting different kinds of glass. He actually tried something like 1,000 different compositions of silica, of soda. He put in potash, he put in arsenic, he put in phosphorus. He tried everything he possibly could, taking from the periodic table. And he found some glass which was absolutely perfect for these amazing lenses. And suddenly Zeiss were streets ahead of the other competitors in the world. And in particular, he came up with an amazing kind of glass which he called Duran. It was a kind of glass that contained boron, borosilicate glass. And I've got here a beautiful piece of glass blowing, right? Piece of scientific equipment made by Adolf Gallenkamp here in the UK, probably sometime in the 1940s. And this is made in borosilicate glass. The great thing about it is that when you heat it and when you cool it, it doesn't expand and contract, and so it doesn't break. And so, nowadays we use all kinds of glass made of borosilicate. It's also known as Pyrex. Well, word was getting round. And the Chancellor of Prussia, right, the Iron Chancellor, Otto Bismarck, heard about it. And he gave a speech about what he called practical Christianity. He felt that the government should actually look after the poor and the elderly. And he brought in a system of pensions which was in part inspired by Abbe's ideas. A few years later, Zeiss died. And when he died, Abbe did something amazing. He was quite wealthy at that point, but he put all of his shares into the foundation. He got Zeiss's son to put all of his ownership into this charitable foundation, and eventually Schott too would put his ownership of his company under this foundation. And Schott continues to this day, and so does Zeiss. Schott has 30,000 employees. It has £4 billion of business. They're the guys who've made the mirrors for all the great telescopes around the world. Chemists everywhere use it. And the thing about it is that this is a charitable foundation within its statutes, looking after its workers and putting money back into education and research. And I think the really wonderful thing is that it points us towards perhaps a different way of doing business from the usual asset stripping. One more thing. We're all looking forward to this vaccine, right? Well, you know what? Every single bottle of vaccine that's coming out of Pfizer is packaged in bottles of Schott borosilicate glass. Now that is enlightened science, and that, I think, is an incredible argument in favor of liberalism. Over to you, Robin.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much. It's still not the same, though, almost having in a room without some sense of a toxic accident. If someone had kind of had a Glade plug-in which simulated a sense of strange burning or something like that, I'd have gone, oh, yeah, Andrea's near. He's not far away. He's not far away.
I know the disappointment. We should have actually arranged for scratch and sniff cards. If we had those, then we could have done a little show where at each stage people in the audience could smell farts or
yeah, we see that. What I imagine though is we go, what happened with the Andrea scratch and sniff cards? Well, they all just caught fire on the second scratch, and the place has been closed down now. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been
my pleasure.
Still one of my favourites is, whatever happened to that enormous test tube that you had made for Hammersmith?
You know what? It's still there. And if we ever do Hammersmith again, that test tube is going to come out. It's been lying under the sink in one of our teaching labs, forgotten and unloved. Remember, it was delivered specifically from the Czech Republic on the morning of the Apollo thing. It was an unbelievable thing. We tested it out at lunchtime, and then we drove across town to light it. I think I have seldom been more terrified in my life.
Oh, it's great, because whatever terror you felt was only half of what everyone in the audience felt, especially those in the front
Steve.
row.
I was going to say, especially Steve, I was about 6 feet away, mate. I don't know your terror. You know what Robin's talking about. You were backstage in the green room at that point.
I do remember saying to you, play your best work early on, because the second half might be too late.
Yeah, you survived.
It's about twice the height of me, isn't it? Because you had to use a ladder, didn't you?
It was huge. Yeah, it was 2.5. It was 2.5. It is 2.5 meters tall. And yeah, it really scares the hell out of me. So yeah, I'll have to have, a little bit of, Dutch courage before I do it again. I'm getting old and more risk averse in my old age.
We were talking about your liquid nitrogen past as well with these shows, and just to remind you that one of the things you had me do was when I was playing a teapot in one gig, you filled it with liquid nitrogen. You said, no, it's perfectly safe as long as you don't breathe in. So
yeah,
that's right.
I was blowing down the spout as a trumpet. I mean, that's literally what I had to do to play it. But yeah, I've survived.
So. No, but that's
like Bill Clinton, you just mustn't inhale. I mean, it's crucial.
Well, that's how Humphrey Lyttelton became such a great jazz player, how he could hold such long notes. They used to have a little bit of liquid nitrogen at the end, and you just think, I just got to keep blowing. I can't let that go.
It's where the word cool came from originally, wasn't it?
We're going to be covering so much of the untrue history of jazz over the final 12 hours of this show.
If you remember, the reason why Miles Davis sounded like this was probably due to an early liquid nitrogen accident that took place at one of his gigs.
Do you know what? I've never seen you do impressions before, and I like it. Thank you so much for joining us.
It'll never happen again.
No, it will. I'm going to make sure. Thank you very much, Andrea Sella. It's great to have you here. Now, the next musician that I'm going to introduce is someone whose work has just covered so much ground, and it's like every time that he brings out an album or he works with someone different, you just you don't know what he's going to produce, because he just is fantastic kind of volatile creative energy. So he's recorded a couple of things especially for tonight, and again, normally he would be on stage with us, but he is going to be on the screen. Please welcome to your screen, Nitin Sawhney.
So just to introduce Anna Phoebe, who's going to be playing violin with me today. And we're playing, first of all, a track that we wrote together called Movement Variation 1, which is on my next album, Immigrants. And after that, we'll be playing a track called Breathing Light, which I wrote for my album Prophecy in 2001. So just to introduce Eva, who's going to be singing You Are, which is from next album, Immigrants.
You are my religion, you are my land, you hold ambition within your hand. You are my journey, you are my ground, you are my silence, you are my sound, you are my protest, you are belief, you are my witness, you are relief, you are my nation, you are my state, my one companion, you are my fate. We die together, though kept apart. We stand united, one broken heart. You are my border, you are my wall. We'll climb together before we fall. You are my religion, you are my land, you hold ambition within your hand. You are my journey, you are my ground, you are my silence, you are my sound, you are my protest, you are belief, you are my witness, you are relief, you are my nation, you are my state, my one companion, you are my fate. We'll die together, though kept apart. We stand united, one broken heart. You are my border, you are my wall. We'll climb together before we fall.
That was beautiful work. That was. I always find when I watch people like you, Steve, or I just watch musicians like that, to me it's shamanism. It is an act of magic because it is so far from any capability that might exist here. It's wonderful.
Well, Nitin is such a master, but also Eva there is someone who I've worked with, having met on one of these shows at Hammersmith, and she's on a track on the Hackney Colliery Band album last year, which is my band, and hopefully we're going to do some more stuff together in the future as well. She's absolutely fantastic, the singer there.
Yeah, it's brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. So I should just tell you what's coming up in the next roughly hour. In the next, we've got Ben Goldacre, Josie Long, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, Stewart Lee, and Chris Hadfield. That's not a bad lineup, is it? I think that's a pretty good lineup. So that's just the next hour. And then also, as I mentioned before, we've got Tim Minchin joining us a little bit after midnight. If you have questions you would like to ask Tim, then tweet them to us. Hashtag 9lessons24, and we'll see if we can do a few questions there. That's going to be about, as I said, about 1:15, midnight, something like that. And I'll mention as well, later on we've got a few more scientists that we can ask. Got Robin Hitchcock coming along as well, who's always fantastic to ask questions to as well. Robin is such a wonderful singer-songwriter. And then we've got the All-Star Christmas Carol. But the next thing we do, now how many continents have we done so far? I think we've only done 2 continents, haven't we, so far? We've done North America with Rusty Schweikart, and we've done, obviously, Europe. We've done that quite heavily.
Yep. I don't think we've done anywhere else yet, have we?
No, we're doing 7 continents. We've got every single continent's covered. We've got someone in each one of those continents. And the next person we have, again, I'm amazed this is the first time it's happened today. It's the first time their internet has crashed. But we're going to do a phone conversation anyway, and we're going to put up some images of their work behind. We're going to go over to Peru, and we're going to go over to Isabel Felandro. Hello, Isabel. This is a proper live television moment. This is what I like. We haven't had enough of these. It started so well with a disaster with a punch. Oh, I haven't heard the noise of Skype for so long. What a xylophone joy. The number you required has not been recognised. So we might do 6 continents tonight. I mean, that's what we're hoping. We're hoping to cut the bit about 7. Pretend I never said 7. Pretend we had aspirations for 5. Isabel, can you hear me? Trent, because I can hear in my ear, I can hear Trent saying, I think she does. Well, I'll tell you what, Trent, shall we try again and go for our next guest in short? Right, so we're going to try and get back to Isabel. If you don't know about Isabel's work, she works with Cool Earth, and we're going to find out more about the work with Cool Earth. But now we are going to go to, again, someone who's definitely done every single year of these shows for the 14 years that we've done these shows, and he was one of the first kind of scientists that I ever worked with in these strange kind of mashups of things, and classically like scientist. The first time I put him on, it was to do a tight 10 about epidemiology, and he managed to do quite a long 50, but it was a very good 50. And his timing, though, has got better and better by basically just talking faster and faster and faster. And he is the man who we always think should be the next Doctor Who, Dr. Ben Goldacre. Ben, are you there?
Hey! Okay, look, like everything else, this is coming from my spare bedroom during COVID. I cut my own hair. It's very greasy at the moment. I've got a milk carton that I wee in if I can't get to the toilet in between meetings. I don't know if you've noticed, there's been a pandemic on. And in the old days, I used to write books and columns and stuff like that. But these days, I'm a sort of grown-up clinical academic. I run a group in Oxford, and we're quite unusual in the Data Lab. We're a truly mixed team of clinicians and academic researchers, but also full-stack software developers. And we build tools that turn large data sets into live interactive data-driven tools. We saw that there were an awful lot of people dying from COVID-19. And we thought, God, I mean, what would be perfect right now? And obviously, it would be completely impossible. But what would be perfect would be if you could build some kind of electronic health records research platform to understand exactly who's at risk of death from COVID-19. But to do that, you'd need the full medical records of tens of millions of people, their full primary care records, but you'd also want that ideally to be linked to their hospital data, you'd want it to be linked to their death records, and that's been done for small portions of the population before, but the data flows are always really, really slow and so on. And so that's exactly what we built. And we did it in order to understand the factors associated with risk of death from COVID-19. This thing here is from our Nature paper. Nature paper means we win at science. And this thing here, some people have said these look like TIE fighters. They're actually much more frightening than that. And you can see here, each of these rows show you the fully adjusted risk associated with each of these disease categories and so on. Now, why do you need such extraordinarily large data, and why do you need it so fast? Well, firstly, why do you need it fast? So traditionally, the way that you do this kind of electronic health records research is that you download large extracts of data, often to work on your local laptop, which is worryingly insecure in moments that we'll talk about in a moment. But, you know, the culture is on a stage of transition. We're all improving. But also those large extracts, they're quite slow. They're done very intermittently. So by the time that the relevant data flows through, lots and lots of people have died from COVID, and you haven't been able to act on the insights that you could have generated. So you need really fast data flows, but you also need really, really, really massive data. And that's because if you want to understand the risk of death from COVID in smaller patient groups of, let's say, 100,000 people or 500,000 people, people who've been exposed to one particular drug that you're interested in or one particular disease that you're interested in, then you need very morbidly to have enough deaths expected in that particular subgroup in order to be able to detect if there is a change in the real number of deaths in that group that is statistically significant. So let's say, for example, everybody was very interested in hydroxychloroquine. There's about 140,000 people in the country today taking hydroxychloroquine. You can go and find out for yourself immediately by looking at our live data tool at openprescribing.net. And if you go to opensafely.org, you can read all about the electronic health records research platform that I'm telling you about today. So let's say there are 100,000 people taking hydroxychloroquine. Let's say that 1 in 1,000 people dies from COVID. So out of 100,000 people taking hydroxychloroquine, you'd expect to see 100 deaths. Now, in the traditional old-fashioned approach where you download an extract of some data, let's say you got 10% of the population's data, and so then you'd expect to see 10 deaths. So then you're going to run sort of fancy statistical models, but fundamentally you're going to go, all right, what if I see 14 deaths? What if I see 7 deaths where I'm expecting 10? And the problem is 10 is such a small number that you'd expect to see random variation anyway, for reasons I can show you. Just give me a sec. So with this thing, I can just make a thing, and then this is ludicrous really, but anyway, look, in this box of beads, you can see that 80% of these beads are white and 20% of them are red. And here, what I was just making with that drill is this very nicely organised spatula. Now, if I put that spatula in here, I'm expecting always to get, on average, 10 beads in my spatula sample of 50. But on this occasion, I've got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15! Now, how do I know if that's a real signal or if it's purely down to the play of chance? Because this time I've done it and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I've got 8. So I could have been completely misled just purely because of sampling error. So that's why you need really, really, really huge data sets in order to detect delicate signals in smaller subgroups, smaller populations. But there's a problem, right? And the problem is you don't want to put everybody's electronic health records in one giant data set and then let people download it or play with it in any way that they want to. Why not? Well, because of the privacy concerns. If you have access to a very large electronic health records data set in a way that is not constrained and controlled, then you can do things like, for example, do a SQL query. That's a query language, and you could say patient select patients where, and then you could say find me everyone who's a woman between 30 and 50 who had twins in 2013, a baby in 2014, and the event codes moved from London to Oxford in 2015. And if you do that, there's only going to be one person who meets those characteristics, and that's my wife. Now, having found my wife, you can then find me. And having found both of us, you could then look at our electronic health records, even a pseudonymized electronic health record where our names and addresses have been taken off. There's still enough information for you to identify us, and then you can find out everything else about me and my wife. And I don't want that to happen. This is, by definition, a bill full of a mixture of famous people and not famous people, because that's the magic of Robin Ince. I've got friends who are famous, I've got friends who are famous who, as a consequence of that, have had dodgy leaks from tax office, police records, all kinds of funny things. This is not okay. Where possible, we have to protect those records as much as possible. So, how do we square that circle? How do we get access, but without the privacy risks? Well, by building something very magical. The OpenSafely cohort extractor. Here she is. She's very good at her job. Okay, now look. Was that wrong? I don't know. Okay, let me show you what electronic health records look like. So fundamentally, your electronic health record is a list. It's a list of events, one after another. And you've got your name and address. Well, you've got your name and your NHS number, and then you've got an event code, which maps onto a real-world concept, like emergency admission with asthma since your last visit. And then you've got a time and a date and a location. Now, the traditional approach to pseudonymization is you just hide that bit, but as we've already discussed, there's plenty of information here for you to uniquely identify people. Now, in any case, you want to convert that into a nice one row per patient data set where you've got one row for each patient, and you don't actually need to know very much about each person. You can compress it down to much less disclosive information. You don't need to know every date of every event of everything. You need that to generate this data set, which you then use in your regression models, in your research analysis. But actually, once you've generated it, that's the only thing you need access to. So first of all, just generating this compresses the data down a lot and makes it substantially less disclosive. But we did something even cleverer than that. So let me tell you. So OpenSafely is completely open source, highly secure analytics platform. You build something called a code list, and oh my god, I despise iPads. Please go away. Just let me in. Right, okay, so if you go to codelist.opensafely.org, you can see all of our code lists. Here's the list of event codes that denote whether or not somebody has had, somebody's got a current diagnosis of COPD, for example. And then you write, you want to process, you want to go through your data and find everybody who's got something that denotes that they've got COPD. So what we've done is we've written a completely new software framework that kind of standardizes that whole process. So for example, this is an example of the way that you use language. You say, okay, make me a column that says COPD, and that's any patient. That's nicely readable code, isn't it? Any patient with these clinical events, and then you pull the COPD case, which is what I showed you on that stupid iPad a moment ago that wouldn't open properly. And then you say return a binary flag, blah, blah, blah. So that will generate your real data set from the real data. But here's the clever bit, right? You also say at the bottom, return expectations. You're saying my expectation is that about 5% of the population is going to have COPD. Now, that little blob of code is used to do two really interesting jobs, alongside all the other little blobs of code that describe all of the other columns or variables that you want produced from your raw electronic health record. It's used to generate two different things. The data set generator, this person here, generates two different things, right? Number one, it generates some fake data, some dummy data, right? Horrible, revolting, fake strawberries, right? Now, these horrible, revolting, fake strawberries, this fake data that she produces, it's not the real data. It looks nothing like the real data. It's not disclosive, but it's also rubbish. It's just completely randomly generated dummy data. Now, because of that, you can download it and you can do literally anything you want with it. So we let people download that, and you can then use that to develop your statistical analysis code fully in the open using GitHub, which is a place where you share all your code as you develop it, because this is a massive problem in science that people are very secretive and don't disclose their methods, don't share their code for efficient reuse and scientific review and all of that stuff. So it generates your dummy data. You use your dummy data to develop your code on GitHub in the open, and then we run a bunch of tests on it, which is all perfectly automated and beautiful. I mean, it's quite infuriating, but it's perfectly automated and beautiful. And then, and only when we're certain that all of your code for generating your research data set and your code for analysing it is definitely capable of running to completion, it's passing all tests, then we press a clever button and it gets pushed through to a tiny little hole to the real environment where it can be run against the real data. It gets pushed through inside a container using something called Docker. It executes against the real data, but you never get to touch the real data. You never get to view it. You never get to tinker with it. It's completely remote from you. So the real data, look, real strawberries, these are terrible props. So your code runs against the real data, which you never get to touch and which you don't need to touch. It plops out into a little folder, your results tables, your graphs, the thing I showed you earlier, this nonsense, right? You get your graphs and your tables at the end. You can look at those, you can make sure that they're not disclosive, and then when you're absolutely happy, you say you're happy, somebody else from the team goes in and says, hey, I'm pretty happy, this isn't disclosive. Pretty happy. Let me tell you, the palaver of the information governance and the meticulousness with which we protect patient privacy. So, when you're certain it's fine, you press a button, it pushes back out to GitHub the non-disclosive information, and your results are out there. This is, I would say, nothing short of phenomenal. It's not just me, and this is a vast galaxy of stars, and really importantly, it's a proper, full, massive collaboration between my group at the Data Lab, the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine Electronic Health Records Research Group, who really know where all the bodies are buried. It's really easy with GP data to very quickly deliver absolutely dreadful research if you don't know what you're doing, and they really know what they're doing. Working in close collaboration with the electronic health record software providers, TPP and EMIS, because crucially, we don't do massive downloads of data. We don't ship data off-site. Instead, we built all of this entire new, highly secure, open source electronic health records platform. We don't extract the data. We took the analytics to the data. We built our analytics platform inside the data center of the software providers who make the software on your GP's desktop computer. So all of our stuff runs in the data center where your electronic health records already reside. We export nothing. So, this was all done in tight collaboration with NHS England and NHSX, who've been absolutely glorious, and I hope it is the beginning of a new era of highly secure, modular, open, computational data science for health. Thanks.
Ben Goldacre. There we are, you see. That's a can see about the Doctor Who thing. He's somewhere between kind of Matt Smith and Tom Baker. There's something going on there. I like it. We're now going to go over to Isabel. So we're going to now get our third continent. We're going to go to Peru. And I know that Isabel Felandro, sorry, should be with us now. Let's find out. Hi, Isabel. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Robin. I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks.
And thanks for struggling through with the technology as well.
Yeah.
Let's get straight into just what is Cool Earth? What is going on there?
Okay. Well, Cool Earth is a non-profit organization that works together with rainforest communities to prevent deforestation and fight climate change. So as you know, many people living in extreme poverty around the world depends on the forest for food and for their livelihood. So in these communities, children suffer from malnutrition, malaria, there is lack of education. So in times of emergencies, one way to generate quick cash is by cutting trees for lumber. So sometimes the real driver of deforestation in those places is poverty. So what Cool Earth does is very simple. We partner with local or indigenous communities located in these tropical rainforests, and communities that have been custodians of the rainforest for generations. So we want to help them by providing financial support so they can have some income they can trust in times of emergencies. So all the funds are managed in the ground by indigenous committees, and also we develop some sustainable local projects as cacao, coffee, and fish farming, so the communities have become more self-sufficient in terms of food and income. So I can personally say that where we work in Peru, in the Awajún and the Ashaninka communities, we have seen tremendous progress and guess in legal logging, and the rates of deforestation are lower in those places Cool Earth is working with than in the nearby communities.
And how did you first become involved with Cool Earth?
Well, I'm a lawyer by profession, and I spent several years working on issues related to environmental law and policy in Peru, working, with policymakers with the hope of creating some institutional changes. But I felt that very little of the work I was doing had a real impact in the ground. So these efforts sometimes were, disconnected from the forest itself and from the people that live there. So that's why after doing a master in the UK and hearing for Cool Earth from the first time, I decided that once returning to Peru, I wanted to find a job in an organization that was working on the ground. So that's how I found Cool Earth, and I have been working with them for 2 years already. It has been an amazing experience, and I feel I understand better how complex the conservation work is and how important it is to listen to the people that live and depends on the forest.
And in terms of, I know it's probably to say a typical day might be quite difficult, but in terms of breaking down what one day might be for people working with and for Cool Earth, what might that day entail?
Well, when people tend to imagine the rainforest, they tend to imagine it without people. But if you go there, you will see children, families interacting with the forest for food, for tools, for most of the resources. So our team in the ground, what it does is help the communities provide support on how to manage these funds. But at the end, as I mentioned before, all the decisions are making on the ground, because it's the communities the ones that know better how to spend these funds to protect the forest. So we only provide some support, and also we run these other projects, cacao, fish farming, coffee, so to bring also an alternative sustainable income for them.
And I presume that some of the attitudes that you first of all deal with, I can imagine that people can be both dismissive of the indigenous people and at the same time have presumptions that perhaps are incorrect. What are the kind of things that you find when you are dealing with this and trying to get this message and this understanding across?
Well, I feel that for any organization that works in areas with indigenous people, so the first thing is that we must respect their culture and their rights, So these people have been in these lands for generations. It's their land. So for any conservation strategy to be effective, we really need to understand what kind of issues those people is confronting every day and what is driving their decisions for sometimes, cutting trees because they are in need of food or in emergency times, no? And COVID has shown us how difficult times the indigenous people has facing in the rainforest, no? And sometimes they don't find assistance for the government, so they really need to get some income to protect their children, to save children to have a better life, have a better education, also for healthcare. So it's very important to really understand what these people is confronting every day.
And how can people help support Cool Earth? What's the best thing for people watching this now in terms of how they can become involved?
Well, if people follow our social media channels, our website, coolearth.com, our Twitter, our Instagram, we are going to be highlighting the amazing work that our team in Peru and in Papua New Guinea is doing. And also all single donations that were made in December will be double. So everyday donation will be having a bigger impact. So I can only say that the next time when you think of saving the rainforest, think of those Ashaninka and Awahum families that live there, because by protecting them, we're also protecting, the rainforest, the Amazon, and at the end, we all benefit because once we cut the rainforest or we cut the trees, it's gone. It's not gonna grow back.
Thank you so much for joining us, Isabel, and I hope everyone does go up and find out more about Cool Earth, and good luck with the rest of your day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Bye.
It's very interesting, and I would highly recommend that you find out more about that. I think our next guest is one of my many double act partners, and someone who is talked quite a lot today about the fact that what we hope over the next 25 hours, basically the 25-hour show, that you hear lots of opinions and ideas from curious and passionate people that with luck we will find at least some kind of sense of combating. At times you can feel that in terms of the depression of being human, I think, sometimes that idea is going, I don't even know if I can be a humanist anymore. You can almost throw your arms up, and then there are certain people that you hear their voices and you realise what they're striving for, and this is a comedian who's done so much of that with a brilliant organisation called Arts Emergency, amongst other things, and it is, I hope, Josie Long. Let's find out. Hey, Josie Long, how are you?
I'm good, although I always feel bad when you say one of my double act partners, and I can just feel everyone watching being like, it's Brian Cox! No,
we've done Brian already. We've done all the stuff he did, the song and everything. It was fine, don't you worry. I just want to do me astronomy. We're fine at the moment. I think Steve and me are beginning to go into the kind of, well, we've been up for about 14 hours and we've got another kind of, 16 hours on stage, but everything's fine. And then suddenly, Steve will just burst into tears and play something very melancholy on the secret trombone that he keeps.
Very useful to be able to express yourself through music in situations like these.
Well, we'll find out how true that is, I think, as the evening goes. How you doing, Josie? You all right?
I'm good. I can't see you.
Okay.
No, we cut him out, actually. It's Tilly.
Oh.
He's like the kind of,
Classic.
very much, I've moved him very much to the sidekick role. So you are, I should first of all say that everyone should, our real best bit of double act work, which we can't reveal anything about though, that we finally got on telly together, and we were on Pointless Celebrities.
We were. Hang on, I need to understand. Is there a real crowd in the room?
We have real people. We either have real people, or that machine Trent has been working on to manufacture sentient robots has worked. Either way, they're brilliant, and they're here.
Listen, I, for one, welcome my new sentient robot overlords. That was harder to say than I anticipated. Yes, we were on Celebrity Pointless, and obviously, let me explain something. Robin is a very honourable and discreet individual, and he's been on Pointless before, and his episode was not aired for nearly 2 years. I am a good friend of Robin's, and we see each other, or we used to, all the time. The man did not reveal to me how he did for 2 fucking years. I was enraged. I went on Celebrity 15 to 1, signed an NDA, that night went on stage and told everyone that I won it. So, we have different ways of being, but I'm going to, because it's Robin, be as discreet as him But I am going to say bad luck to all those soap stars.
Anyway, so don't you dare. It was actually I kept it because I kept it secret from my son, who was about 9 at the time, and he would go.
This is honourable behaviour to the extent of it being actually warped. Not even to tell your child.
But it made it so, because he was working it out all the time. He was going, Dad, I think you must have been out in the 3rd round, because I think you'd have done okay, but I'd have found the trophy by now. I'd have found that block of Perspex, right? And he was going through and then he watched it with my dad, and apparently he did just spend the whole time, he couldn't sit down. He was going, oh, God, I think Dad's going to get this right. I think Dad's not going to say a point. It's going to be 2 points. He's going to get it. And he got really... So that point of victory, it was worth waiting 2 years. But he's going to be 13 in 2 weeks, so he will not give a jot about the next one.
And where did you hide the trophy for 2 years?
Do you know what? I left it directly on the mantelpiece in the little box. That was the worst thing. It was there all the time.
This is like how Johnny has bought me some CBD gummy sweets. And I'm certain that if my daughter ever discovers them, she's 2.5, she doesn't understand. She'll hoon the whole lot and she'll be calm, I guess. But I don't want to risk it. So what I've done similarly is I've just put them with all the other vitamins. They are out of reach, so don't call social services. But at the same time, she's never ever expressed an interest in the vitamins. So I figure, perfect hiding place. I wanted you to say a dad joke of when I said, where do you hide the trophy? And you say something like, in the fruits and vegetables. You know. Or like in his homework.
The tragedy of dad jokes, as any dads will know here or watching, is that it's not a change. They are the jokes that were effective until your child was around 11 or 12 years old. So it's like you're still doing the same routines and you're going, why is this not working? This was killer stuff. That
you're
frozen
like
pea routine.
Ball. You're like Bobby Ball in 1991.
Well, good. That gives me a few years. Thank you.
No, I have a similar thing, which is my only memories of things like the wheels on the bus or head, shoulders, knees and toes is of feeling really distinctly like, ugh, these songs are so babyish. And it's because the times when they're not are pre-memory. And it's so sad. They're good until when you start to understand they're too babyish and remember that, they've already outlasted themselves. Oh, unbearable. Or just for me, just my own nostalgia there.
I had a tremendous sadness that at 2.5 years old, my son was a big fan of the work of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, but he grew out of it. So that at 2.5, it's like having a 2.5-year-old who enjoys olives and then at 5 goes, no, and you go, what's happened? You're doing the reverse. But there's a song called The Sorrowful Wife, and it was called the Ding Ding Song, because it's one of those ones that's very slow. I married my wife on the day of the eclipse. And then it just suddenly goes, bang, 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 and they just jump up and down in the chair and you go, ding, ding, song. And then one day he liked monkey music again, so it was all over. Which you've never experienced, have you, Josie? Monkey music, monkey music.
I've only experienced the exact thing that you've just done and you doing it every year, about once a year.
Oh, more than once a year. Every podcast we do. Hey, Josie, monkey music, monkey. Imagine what I'm going to be like at 8 a.m.
I love dancing, by the way. I think you both are looking, you're both looking very sprightly and very well, but it's very interesting because Robin, this is the first time I've ever seen you with facial hair. And I'm certain it didn't happen over the last 14 hours.
Can you spot anything? That has got facial hair on that side. I didn't have time to shave both halves in the time, so I'm only half done.
You're doing a Victor Victoria later on?
Oh, yeah, always, whether I've done this or not. Can you remember the name of... We did this lovely festival. It's called the Crap Comedy Festival in Oslo. Such a delight. What was the name of the guy who shaved off half his head?
Rolf,
right. This was great.
And he did a bit where he mimed masturbating God. I'm sorry to interrupt because I've kind of ramped it up, but you remember that.
It wasn't Rolf then, it was the other guy, because Rolf, right, so we would go and watch their shows, and most of the shows were in Norwegian, but they were still, it didn't matter. We just saw him in a white suit climbing a stepladder with a big bucket and then doing this right? And it all came across what he was doing. And but the other guy, I forget his name now, Lars, right, did this sketch where he shaved. So he had a beard and a full head of hair, and he shaved half of it off. And 3 days later, we went for a meal with him, and he still had just half his head shaved. And we said, Lars, why haven't you shaved the other half of your head? He said, well, I'd forgotten. I promised my girlfriend who's doing a hairdressing course that she could do some styles on me. And she was really annoyed because I'd shaved off half my head. So I promised to keep the other half so at least she could work on that.
But also, his day job was psychiatric nurse.
Yes, he was. That's what we said. We said, what's your job, by the way? We're not communicating. And he was going in as a psychiatric nurse with half his head shaved.
Which
I love Norway.
Akin to trolling one's patients, you know? It's just a little too much. Yes, and how are you feeling today about the world? Okay, sorry.
Well, I suppose it would be, and how are you feeling today? Because I think you should be quite cross. Or are you feeling all right?
You're making a lot of progress towards hell.
Yeah. I'm young. I'm Freud. Anyway, so...
Now that is a Victor Victoria I would love to see you do over hours.
Okay, join me at 8 a.m. We'll be doing that. Josie, is there anything you want to tell people before time's up?
I could do a John Ruskin, Walter Pater Victor Victoria that went, if anything, it is our notion of forming habits at all which limits us. No, one must have healthy habits. There you go. That's all
I think just by the routines that we've done together, the young Freud, right, and the Pater Ruskin routine, I think already people are going, we have to get the vaccine moving quicker because that is a live show I need to see at the Palladium. That is a necessity. Oh, Josie, I think you're going to stay with us possibly for when Sophie joins us. Am I right, Trent, in saying that Sophie Ellis-Bextor is about to join us?
I may not. I don't want to cause chaos. But
it's not with Josie. That's a pity. It says on the running order, the very poor quality running order has it's all fallen apart here.
Robin, I've got great news about the running order actually, which is that I've completed the first sheet. First sheet of 3 done.
What is this? Your number one Christmas number one?
No. The running order.
Oh, okay.
The running order. That means I think we're a third of the way through.
Oh, no, we have to go back to the beginning because some of the people missed it.
Okay, fair enough. Right.
There's still another 25 hours forever. Josie Long, I can't wait for us to work together properly again. We'll keep making book Shambles. There's hopefully we're going to record some in the next couple of weeks. There's a load of those still going out, but it is always just such a delight to work with you. So I will see you very soon.
Have a lovely time, guys. Enjoy
Josie Long.
Bye. Merry Christmas or not, whatever. Bye.
It was so sad, that bit of just, because we had, normally Josie and me work together pretty much at least once a week and more than that. And then, we hadn't worked for 9 months and then we go to Pointless Celebrities. And then there's even like a perspex little sheet between you and the person you're standing with. And it felt like kind of light entertainment prison movie. It was quite intriguing. Now we're going to go with someone who, again, talking of bringing joy, it was one of the things where I think when people were feeling down during the first lockdown and they would turn to this and it was just one of the most delightful things, which was the kitchen disco of Sophie Ellis-Bextor. So I think we have Sophie with us now. Hello, Sophie.
Hi there, Robin. How are you?
I'm great. We are still cock-a-hoop at this point. This is I've got the kitchen disco. Where did that come? Because it really it was filled with such it's hard entertainment as it was, in the way that a TV producer, something like that could never exist because it felt so true and delightful and just the sense of connection with it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was actually Richard, my husband's idea. I thought he was pretty balmy when he suggested it because at the beginning of the lockdown in March, our youngest was only 14 months and I was like, how am I going to, got 5 kids. I thought I'm not going to be able to hold that together. But actually, it was really fun. I mean, but every time we do one, I get nerves. Like, okay, is this the one where, one of the kids does an ambitious dance move and hurts himself or something? But yeah, I'm not sure if it's entertaining. I don't know what it is. I suppose it is entertaining, but I don't think you could have it as an entertainment show because actually it's complete chaos.
But that's part of it. That's when you realise the shortcomings, I think, of television. It's a bit like some of the festivals that I've played with Steve and stuff like that, where sometimes you're allowed to have the performer's tent, like to just put on something at 3 a.m, like with Robin Hitchcock when we did a live improvised giant killer crab musical with jazz musicians and opera singers and dancers. And it was, I think, artistically one of my finest achievements.
It's incredible that. I love
it
that.
will never, you know, and that's what I loved about, because the kitchen disco seems to have half and half between kind of, you know, Ken Loach has been asked to remake Saturday Night Fever, and that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because initially, you're right, it was about connection, and like Richard and I missed everybody, and it was a way to kind of distract ourselves and say hello to everyone. But I think also it was an opportunity to really have a rant. So while I was singing songs, I could be just sort of spouting off about all the stuff I was finding stressful. We're going to do another one actually on Friday, a Christmas one. Have you got any favourite Christmas songs that I should do?
Would you know what it's such a cliche, but my favourite, oh actually no, what's the one, Greg Lake's one, they say there'll be snow this Christmas, they say there'll be peace on earth. Is that Greg Lake's one?
Oh, well, I know the one you mean.
I believe in Father Christmas, yeah. Do you know that one?
They say there'll be snow this Christmas, they say that one, there'll be peace on earth. Okay, quite folky. I'm not sure I can get people dancing to that.
Oh, well then if all the children could just start playing the bells, it would be fantastic.
Okay, cool. I'll go and find the Von Trapps and we'll set them to rehearsal.
Yes. Why? What wonderful curtains you used to have. And you're going to do something for us tonight as well. Am I right in saying that you have a song tonight?
Yes, absolutely. I was asked for something uplifting, so I gave you a choice, either a bit of Madonna or a bit of Julie Andrews, which actually is very fitting because we were just talking about the Von Trapps, so I don't know which one.
Can I put it to our live audience that we have here? Can I ask them to do that? Put that to a vote?
Yeah, do it.
Oh, well, right. We're going to put it to a vote, but whatever you vote for, it's the same thing you're going to get. So let's find out. Right. So who wants to hear some Julie Andrews? Yay! Who wants to hear some Madonna? Well, I have got a fantastic treat for you because we're going to hear Sophie Ellis-Bextor's version of Madonna singing The Sound of Music. So that's it's fantastic. Sophie, thanks so much. I will be watching. So what night is it on, the Kitchen Disco?
We're going to do it on Friday the 18th, 6:30 sharp. Be there or be square. Be there and be square, actually.
I definitely, I can't remove the squareness, so that's the only way I can do that.
Same here.
And I hope also we'll invite you to, Brian and me, we're going to do our Hammersmith Christmas show, but it's going to be in June, I think, or July, but we're going to make it...
Oh my God, yeah, please have me there. I'll be there with bells on, which will be appropriate.
Well, we do want to make sure it's the most Christmassy version that we've ever done, because it just feels that you can't deny it. Let's make it full Christmas.
I'm really up for that, honestly. Sign me up.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sophie. Everyone there, that's Friday night. And now, here is Madonna's version of Sound of Music as interpreted by Sophie Ellis-Bextor.
In times like these, who doesn't need a little bit of Julie Andrews, quite frankly? I know that I do. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favourite things. Exactly, your favourite things too. Cream-coloured ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favourite things. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that melt into springs. These are a few of my favourite things. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favourite things, and then I don't feel so bad. Is it cheering you up, Ray? Is it cheering you up, Jessie? No, I have to keep going then, I guess. It's cheering me up. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorites. well it is. Cream-colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, walkies that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that melt into spring. These are a few of my favorite. Where's the dog? When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things. Then I don't feel so bad. Sorry about that.
Sophie Ellis-Bextor.
Thank you.
That is lovely. They are such a lovely family. What a delightful thing. And I should just tell you a few things that are coming up very, very soon. We've got Robin Hitchcock's going to be joining us. If you've got any questions for Robin Hitchcock, who, amongst other things, a fantastic film called Storefront Hitchcock, which is a recording of a gig that he did with Jonathan Demme. And then Jonathan Demme went on and cast him in The Manchurian Candidate and also Rachel Getting Married. So Robin's going to be joining us. So if you've got any questions for Robin Hitchcock, and he's also a huge fan of the Giant Killer Crabs novels, as I mentioned before, and I have brought some of those along. So we might have a little bit of a Giant Killer Crab conversation. We've got Robert Smith, as I mentioned before, Robert Smith of The Cure. He's recorded in the last couple of days 3 special versions from the album 17 Seconds for us. We've got John Luke Roberts, of course we've got Charlie George, we've got Kiri Pritchard McLean, and we've got our special Christmas Carol as well, I said, which is lots of different people reading out excerpts of Christmas Carol. It's all been put together as one piece, and we've got Joe Brand, Andy Nyman, Guy Pearce, Eddie Izzard, Charlotte Church, David McColeman, loads of people involved in that. And also, please don't forget that we are doing this. If you can go to our Patreon, if you're able to support us for our Patreon, that is fantastic. If you are able to support the charities as well that turn to us, Mind and also King's Place music charity, and also MSF Médecins Sans Frontières. That is fantastic. We are still here for another 16 and a half hours, I think. So now, please welcome to the stage, just to perk us up, really, with joy. Please welcome to the stage Father Christmas, a.k.a. Santa Claus.
Good evening. I should like to repeat a prepared statement I've written. So, Merry Christmas. It is I, Father Christmas, and I should like, if I may, to read a brief prepared statement. I believe it was I who said, "I see you when you're sleeping, and I know when you're awake. I know if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. But this year, I'm afraid I shall not be seeing you when you are sleeping, and I will not know if you are awake, because this year I will not be coming at all. First of all, a number of problems. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, zoomed me on the internet to tell me in the strongest terms possible that my annual distribution of free toys represented an unacceptable socialist intervention in the marketplace. According to Sunak, I, with my magic elf workforce who slave for pies, and my reindeer delivery mechanism which circumvents all border trade tariffs, was not operating on a level playing field and was undercutting genuine businesses. Surely, Mr. Sunak, I replied, Such an approach is the very essence of your own party's vision for the post-Brexit trading environment, making me simply a buccaneering Santa, banishing workers' rights and red tape in a race to the bottom in pursuit of full-spectrum market dominance. But Sunak ignored my cast-iron logic and resorted to emotional manipulation, requesting that in a year when admittedly hard-working retailers need all the business they can get due to the twin wrecking balls of both COVID-19 and the no-deal Brexit, I desist immediately from my financially disruptive activities in the name of maintaining the flow of the economy. I was weighing up Sunak's request when I suddenly received a mobile telephone call from Ben Bradley, Conservative MP for Mansfield, saying he knew for a fact children simply sold my Christmas gifts to get money for crack dens and brothels. And that I was a snowflake. Mr. Bradley, I said, astounded, what in the name of Christmas is wrong with snowflakes? They're quite simply beautiful, Mr. Bradley, and if you cannot see the magic of snowflakes, then how can you be expected to understand the magic of Christmas, you cunt? But though I should love to defy, that bit's finished now, this is the next paragraph. But though I should love to defy and deliver your children's gifts as usual this Christmas, a sad fact remains, mums and dads watching out there, that my supply chains have been broken down by the COVID-19 virus. And it has not been safe for my elves to slave in my workshop in anywhere near enough numbers to meet demand. And on top of that, I am an old man with high blood pressure and a heart condition, and it's simply not acceptable for me to don my furry costume, enter the bedrooms of literally millions of children undetected, and make a deposit on their bedspreads. If indeed it ever was. They were different times, ladies and gentlemen. But nonetheless, I'm determined that I and the parents of innocent children preserve the magic of Christmas. So why not, I ask you, simply allow this year the sleeping youngsters to believe that I've visited them, even though I have not? What I propose is a radical plan, and it's this. This year, mums and dads watching at home, I'm going to have to ask you to make a great sacrifice. I know it's been a hard year, but I'm asking you to delve deep into your already depleted savings and to buy for your own children the very gift you would usually have expected me to bring, and to conceal it somewhere safely around your home. I appreciate this is, as you would say, a big ask, but we must work together. Then before your children go to bed, I'm not coming, remember, make a great show of leaving out a selection of treats for me and my reindeer. A carrot for Rudolph, and a nice malt mince pie and a single malt whiskey for me. Try to avoid having to answer questions about how many mince pies I eat in a single night. But if you have a particularly precocious child, tell them that, like that of Christ, my body is subject to the laws of the early Christian doctrine of Docetism, namely that my physicality is illusory And so, even if I eat pies and drink spirits in copious amounts all Christmas Eve, I'm not required to perform the expected biological processes of either digestion or defecation. And if your child should counter you, pointing out that this doctrine of Docetism was unequivocally rejected at the First Council of Nicaea in 380-5 AD, and is in fact regarded as heretical by the Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodox Church, and the Coptic Orthodox Church of Alexandria, simply point out to this child that many Protestant dominations accept and hold to the statements of these early church councils, and that indeed there is an albeit reactionary desire within the conservative mystical fringes of the Catholic community itself to reset the Mother Church to the values and beliefs of its earliest and purest incarnations. And then remind them that if they don't accept that, they must go to sleep or else Santa will not come. And when your children are asleep, simply creep in, this is my plan, and conceal their gift, now housed in a pillowcase or some kind of sack, on or near their bed. And then go downstairs and make sure you dispose of the supposed Santa food to make it look as if I have visited after all, perhaps leaving a few convincing pie crumbs, carrot shards and whiskey dregs to suggest that I consumed a complimentary snack in something of a hurry, having so many homes to visit. Your naive child will wake up in the morning, delighted with my gift, thinking that I have visited as usual, as I have done every year previously, when in fact this year it was actually you, the parents, all along, carrying out perhaps the greatest subterfuge ever. Together we can make this COVID-19 Christmas as magical as any other. And if it makes a child happy, was it so very wrong? And if this deception works this year, then maybe we can do it every year. I, a Turkish saint born some 1750 years ago, am getting old. The world warms and snow melts, and soon there'll be no snowbound workshop for me to work in, and no reindeer for me to ride. I am handing you, parents of the world, the reins. Merry Christmas, and remember, never trust a Tory. Good night.
Thank you very much to Father Christmas there, Father Christmas doing something very similar to something that happened at the Albert Hall. I don't know if you remember when Father Christmas, much like Stewart Lee, swore very close to the proximity of an appearance by an astronaut leading to various letters of complaint. Let's hope the man who sent the particularly vitriolic letter wasn't waiting for Chris now. Anyway.
Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. We're able to make shows like this. Every single week we make something, not always 25 hours long, though sometimes before the edit it can be. But we're able to make these thanks to those who support us via Patreon. If you are able to support us via Patreon, then please do go to patreon.com, Cosmic Shambles. We are the Cosmic Shambles Network, and I hope you enjoy what you see.